Hey, and welcome to your 386 class. I trust that you all have had a great time reading your Traits Lit Review article since the last time we were together. I know that it's one of those fantastic reads. It's just a page turner. You just can't put it down until you finish. Um, no, I say that very tongue in cheek. It's a difficult read that's full of a lot of information. It's very dense. I know that, and I do apologize for how tough it is to read and the info that's in there. However, the information that's in there is extremely valuable. And we're going to talk about that today so that we can understand what we know about entrepreneurs a little bit more, but also so that we can build upon the conversation we began having last week about the individual as an entrepreneur. Well, what does that mean? And how do we become more self aware? Now, if you remember last week, I told you like every person out here is dealt a hand of cards. We have no choice over the cards that were dealt. And so to be successful, we just must learn to play those cards effectively. Some of the things that I'm trying to expose you to at the beginning of the semester here are ways that you can become more self aware, or in other words, how can you look at the cards that are in your hand and understand them? Know what they are, and be very, very mindful of what this means for you so that we can better learn how to play those cards. Last week, we talked about bounded rationale, and you figured out that there is this limited amount of knowledge that we have based upon time and experiences. And we hope that we are continually doing things to enhance our experiences so that the knowledge that we have inside our boundary is growing. And we also know that the knowledge that's inside our boundary is going to be different from everyone around us, all because we've all had different experiences in life. We know that that doesn't make anyone smarter or better than the other. It just means that our information is different. So that's the first component that we're going to think about when we think about being self-aware and which cards were dealt. We really didn't have a choice as to where we grew up. We didn't have a choice to who our parents were, what their values were. Most of us didn't have a choice about what schools we attended. So those are some of the cards that were dealt. What do we do with them? When you read this article about traits and the entrepreneur and the research that's out there, I wanted you to do this and think about it in a few ways. First, I wanted you to learn the research about entrepreneurs, but also I wanted you to read this and think about yourself so that you could start to identify with some of the traits, see which ones resonated with you and which ones you felt like were strong in your life. So let's start talking about the article and what we found. Now, when academics first began researching entrepreneurs, intuitively they thought there must be this specific set of traits that a person has that can predict who's going to be an entrepreneur. And also, it would predict who's going to be a successful entrepreneur. Intuitively, that kind of makes sense. If you think about it, you think, oh, yeah, okay. However, all of the research has told us that's just not true. There are no set traits that will predict who is going to be an entrepreneur. And there are also no traits that will predict who's going to be successful. Now, that's really interesting because what that means in the grand scheme of things is regardless of what your personality traits are and the ones that you were born with, what your cards are, you can still be an entrepreneur and you can still be successful. The key is to look at which traits you have and to learn to use them the most effectively and in the most effective situation for you. So the first set of traits that they talked about were the big five. Now, for the exam and going forward, you're going to need to go through this article and you're going to need to know all of the traits and their definitions. You're going to need to know the different behaviors and attitudes and the definitions associated with them. But just writing all of that down and learning that is only the first step in learning. You also need to know how to apply these and how do these traits intermingle with each other? How do they react with each other? And what does that mean for entering into your career or your entrepreneurial life? You're going to need to be able to think critically about these and start to put it together. I'll do some of that for you in this lecture. And as we move on through the semester, you'll see better what I'm talking about how to make all of this kind of fit together so that you're playing your cards the best way that you can. So back to the big five. The big five personality traits. That's agreeableness, extroversion, introversion, neuroticism, openness to experience, and what was the other one? I'm sitting here trying to talk to you. Conscientiousness. Now, of course, I've told you, researchers found that there is no set of these traits that's going to predict who is an entrepreneur. However, they were able to do some research and see that there are some differences in traits that seem dominant in managers, people who actually are helping people to perform a predetermined task and managing that task. That's how we view a manager, or an entrepreneur, someone who is actively looking for and exploiting opportunities. And some of the differences that they saw when we start talking about them kind of make sense. The first one they found a difference in was openness to experience. Now, that trait is just what it sounds like. We're open to new experiences. And it would make sense that entrepreneurs definitely have a higher level of openness to experience. We tend to have a higher level of entrepreneurial awareness, and we tend to go out and look for the opportunities to exploit. Managers, we envision them as people who are actually happy with the status quo, and they look at perfecting a task over time and getting better and better at it, but they don't want a new task. A way that you can kind of think about how this works for you is to think about this question. Do you embrace and enjoy change, or is it a negative in your life? If you embrace change and you enjoy it, then you probably are high on openness to experience. If you're one of those people that hates change and you fight it, probably low on openness to experience. So as I said, when you read these, think about yourself and how this may play out. Another place where they saw some differences were on agreeableness. Agreeableness is just what it sounds like. How agreeable are you to other people and situations? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you're argumentative. So let's think about that. An example. We have a task. We're a corporation, we have a task, we give it to the manager. Manager's like, okay, yes, I can do that. I'll find the best way to do that. Thank you. Good company man. Good company man or yes man. Give it to me. I'll handle it. I'll handle it. I'll do it. High on agreeableness. However, give that same task to someone who's an entrepreneur, and they're probably going to say something more like, have you ever thought about doing it like this? Or, oh, if you tried this, would this work better? As you can see, that's not argumentative, but that's also not agreeable. So it makes sense to say that managers are most times are higher on agreeableness than entrepreneurs are. Now, remember, we're saying these are tendencies and these are probabilities, but this doesn't mean it's the truth all of the time. So please keep that in mind. There's always exceptions to everything. Another trait that we look at was, conscientiousness. Now, conscientiousness is broken down into two parts. Sorry about that. Thank you. Broken down into two parts: dependability and achievement motivation. Now, achievement motivation is just what it sounds like. It's what is your internal drive to achieve? Are you a self-motivator? Can you get up every day and make yourself get to work? For those of you who are taking an online class, congratulations. That tells me that you have some drive. You're doing this on your own. So you probably have a high level of achievement motivation. Or are you the type of person that needs someone giving you direction every day and holding you accountable to make sure you make it happen? Those are people who are lower on achievement motivation. This is not to say that everyone doesn't value achievement. That's not what it means. It's just, can you do this on your own, or do you have to have someone push you? What research has found is that entrepreneurs tend to be higher on achievement motivation. Makes sense when we start thinking about entrepreneurs really don't have someone looking over their back or holding them accountable. You have to get up every day and go make this happen on your own. So they found that entrepreneurs were higher on achievement motivation. Dependability, the other component of conscientiousness, say that 5 times fast. However, it really pertains more to like eye for detail. Eye for detail, follow through, those types of things where people seem dependable. And they found that managers tended to be higher there. Again, when we think about that, that probably makes sense. Entrepreneurs tend to be more big picture thinkers. The people who are very successful as managers are the ones that can fill in those details and the ones who follow through. So they found those differences. And I hope this is all starting to make sense to you. The other 2 traits that they talked about were introversion, extroversion. They really didn't find a difference. Now, sometimes extroverts can be more successful in a different venture phase, which you saw in the article, but overall, it really doesn't predict anything. Now, I want to be sure that you understand the difference between introversion and extroversion. And I'm going to explain it to you in a way that most people can relate to, because I don't think most people really have the correct idea of what the definition is. If you're the type of person that when you are around other people, you feed off of them, they give you energy, and then when you part ways, you feel energized because you've been with them, then you're an extrovert. You feed and collect energy from other people. However, if you're the type of person who you spend time with people and you interact with them, have great meaningful connection, but when you're finished, you're exhausted, you're probably an introvert. An introvert is the type of person where other people take energy from you. Now, people who know me fight me on this because they can't believe it. They say, no, it's not true. Most people will not believe I am an introvert. Off the charts introvert. And they'll say, no way, Gina, there's no way that you are. Like, you interact with people, you're out there, you're a public speaker, you're a teacher, you make lots of great connections and networking, you're an extrovert. And I'm like, no, you misunderstand. I can do that. I've taught myself to do that, to be good with people. However, at the end of the day, when I finish, I'm exhausted, completely drained, done. And so, yes, I'm an introvert. If I don't find my time alone to recharge, then I'm terrible with people and with every task I have. So you can kind of start to think about yourself and where you fall there. And maybe you're just kind of somewhere in the middle. You can be there too. But you can also see how this might not predict who is or isn't a successful entrepreneur. And finally, the last one they talked about was neuroticism. And again, I'm sorry, I've been talking all day, so trying to make this video, I've got a bit of a dry throat. Neuroticism had a student in class who kept talking about this as when people are crazy. Well, when people are crazy, well, that's not what it means. It isn't the word, I think we've used it in slang sometimes, that they're neurotic and it means they're crazy. It's really not it. An easier way to understand this is people who are full of drama, the drama king or queen. An example, there's a spider on the floor. There, some people are going to go, there's a spider. They're going to walk over, step on it, kill it, sweep it up on a piece of paper, throw it in the trash. Okay, it was a spider. Then there are going to be other people who see that spider who are going to lose it. They're going to scream and be like, oh my God, it's a spider. Oh my God, somebody come kill it, come kill it, come kill it. Okay, the person who goes crazy like this, probably higher on neuroticism. The drama associated with it. Person who was calm, just handle it, lower. So I hope that you have a better understanding of these traits, what they mean, how they play out in entrepreneurs' lives, and that you can start to resonate with these. I would love it if you do go take the free test. I gave you a link for it on the website so that you can see what your personality traits are and where you fall. Like I said, the key to being successful is knowing what the cards are that you've been dealt, learning those cards inside and out, memorizing those cards and knowing what they mean so you can learn to play them effectively. All right, moving on in the article, it also talks about some other terms that are really, really important. One of the ones it talks about is self-efficacy. Weird word, hard to say, but it really means I'm confident in that I can do something. Self-efficacy means I have the confidence that I can perform something well. Now, generalized self-efficacy is something that paints a big picture. I have self-efficacy, a high level of self-efficacy in the business world. Because of the information that's in my bounded rationale, my experiences that I've had over time, I feel really confident that wherever I'm placed in the business world, I can, with enough preparation, perform well. I have a lot of confidence in myself in that. That's general. There's a lot of things in the business world that we could do. So that's a really generalized self-efficacy for me. Self-efficacy can also be very task specific. My words. And one of the ones it mentioned in the article was entrepreneurial self-efficacy. That is, I am confident that I can perform as an entrepreneur very well. Now, in teaching entrepreneurship classes, I want you to know that my goal is, and the way that I approach this, is that I am trying to increase your entrepreneurial self-efficacy. I hope that by the time you finish this class with me, that it will be higher than it was when you started the class. A lot of times I see people taking this class and they come in the beginning, they say, I would really like to open my own business, but I'm not sure I'm ready yet. And what I see when people say that is low entrepreneurial self-efficacy. I hope that I give you the tools this semester to help you increase that, so that by the time you finish this semester, you're like, oh, wait, yeah, I can do that. Because the truth is, you can. So we have self-efficacy, and then we also have something called locus of control. We have internal locus of control and external. Now, locus of control is where you place control of decision-making and the things that happen in your life. If you have an internal locus of control, you believe you are in charge of your life. You're in charge of all of the decisions you make, good and bad, and the outcomes really fall back to you. If that statement we've heard all the time, the buck stops here. Internal locus of control. An external locus of control means that you feel like everything that happens to you is because of the people who are around you and the environment you're in. And you really feel almost a learned helplessness that you're just going to kind of flow along as to whatever happens to you happens. You hear people say, is what it is. And that's usually a signal to me that someone's kind of existing with an external locus of control. Now, the interesting thing about this is you can think about yourself and you can kind of think of where you think you fall. But a lot of this is contextual. We tend to have a higher level of internal locus of control when we have a high level of self-efficacy at something. We want to control what happens when we know we're going to be good at something or when we're confident we can do it well. However, if we are not confident or things go poorly, we can tend to slide back over to an external locus of control. So, for example, things are going well. You have good grades. You're like, yeah, look at me. I'm smart. I've got this. All of a sudden, you make a bad grade on something. And then the first thing that comes out of you is, well, the teacher did this or did that. That's external. Now, this is a very, very common response, just something that you should be aware of so that you can control it. And what that really is happening in you is if we perform something that we have a high level of self-efficacy and we do it well, then we like to have positive self-talk, and it helps us to reinforce that high level of self-efficacy. If something comes along and it doesn't go as we planned, and we had a high level of self-efficacy, then we start looking for other reasons why it went bad. And we do that as humans and as human nature so that we can preserve what we have a high level of confidence in. We don't want that confidence to be shaken. And we have seen instances where if someone's confidence has been shaken, they can't perform well. Think about what happened with Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was at the top of his game when some of the information started coming out about the problems with his marriage or some of the problems he was having that led to a wreck that he had. All of a sudden, those things started playing with his head, and we saw a low level of self-efficacy with him, and we saw his golf game suffer. So that helps you to better understand why we naturally may revert back to external locus of control in order to start to preserve our self-efficacy. Now, as you're thinking about all of this, I also want you to think about how some of the strength we have in these traits may shift over time or depending upon what's going on in our life. So it talked about the traits and some of the things that we see, especially risk tolerance through venture phases. Now, risk tolerance is how high is your level of tolerance for risk? And it's different for everybody. So by the time we finish the semester and you've completed a business canvas, when we get to the end of the business canvas, you're going to look at it and you're going to be able to assess the risk associated with opening this business. We're going to measure it. It's going to be there. The number's the same regardless of who's looking at this business canvas. Some people will look at that number and say, that's nothing. Let's go for it. While others will look at the same information and say, no way, not going to do it. That's because your level of risk tolerance is different. Now, neither good nor bad, just know yours. It's one of your cards. And what we're going to learn starting in next class is, now that we've got all these tools to look at our cards and start to assess them and what they really mean, how do we play them? But before we get into learning how to play our cards, we're going to have a homework assignment. And in that homework assignment, this is where we're really going to start to articulate our cards. It lets me know that you've thought through them and you know what they mean. And we're going to do this with the homework assignment, your strengths and weaknesses analysis. Now, in the business world, you're going to hear about SWOT analysis all of the time. SWOT. S stands for strengths. W is for weaknesses. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, whether that is with an individual or internal to a corporation, if you're doing a SWOT analysis on a business or an industry. Opportunities and threats are external. Now, we're not going to look at opportunities and threats right now. We're going to do strengths and weaknesses. And this is your first assignment for class. You're going to go to the strengths and weakness assessment that I've provided for you, and I will give you directions for that in a bit. And I want you to really take some time and think through this. What are your strengths? Think about all the traits we've talked about. Think about, your skills that you have. Think about the resources you have at hand, your experiences. What's inside your bounded rationale? What about your network? Do you have a really strong one? And I want you to think about all aspects of your life and list what your strengths are. I also want you to be really honest with yourself and list your weaknesses. What are you not good at? Because no one is good at everything. Every person has weaknesses, and it's okay. Look at your weaknesses, list them out, and then say, okay, and accept them. These are just the cards I was dealt. And what I'm going to do is teach you some ways to help build up those weaknesses so that you can succeed in life. But I really want you to take a lot of time to do this and to think about it. This information, I don't care what form you put it in on the piece of paper, if you want to do bullet points, if you want to write more detail, but please know you're doing this for you, not for me. Now, I'm going to grade it, of course, but this is to help you better understand your cards so that you can be successful. You need to know them inside and out. Brutally honest with yourself. You're also going to use this information in a week or so when you get this back, and you're going to use this information to do your next homework assignment too. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to post your strengths and weaknesses assessment on the website for you to complete. I'll give you some more information there on how you should complete it. Okay? If you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to me, and I look forward to seeing your S&W analysis. Have a great night, everyone.